There we go. Welcome. This is the Perseverance Zoom Lab for February coming up. So what we do in this after our check-in is I'm going to give just a few highlights so that I can jog my own brain, but hopefully everyone else's, about what exactly was in that packet that was delivered in the middle of Christmas holidays. You know, it's like, woo-hoo. I could barely remember myself. So I went back and read it, and I thought it would be a fun time for me to give just a little overview to warm up our brains, and then we'll go into our guided conversation. In addition, I thought I would just do a little bit of business meeting, and that is to thank everyone for the contributions you all have been making. On Facebook, I wanted to thank Corinna for the Pinterest bulletin board quotes. I just think that's great, and I want to point everyone to those. She has this wonderful Pinterest page, and after this, I can tell you all about Pinterest and how we can use it as religious educators, but that's not the topic today. But if you want to stay on after I record, I'll talk about that. And so all these beautiful quotes, which make perfect quotes for the bulletin boards we need. I wanted to hold up Juliana's Spotify music list, which she's now publishing for the theme. Robin's bookmarks that she puts on the Facebook page associated with the theme every month. Bob, who's here today with us, and Leah and Lenny are the regulars on the brainstorming sessions that I hold, and those are just free-for-alls for something that's coming up in 2 months. And the whole arc of the themes idea, which was on Facebook, Leah came up with this at our last brainstorming meeting, which is that intention, perseverance, balance, and emergence is an arc. So you set an intention, you persevere, you're trying to do it, and by the way, today is an actual holiday called Drop Your Resolution Day, based on 80% of the people who just stopped doing it, and someone made today the day to do that. So you want to persevere through your intention, and maybe through February. You want to achieve balance in whatever you're trying to do. Maybe at that point in March, it's getting really tiring, so you say, I'm going to set this piece aside, and I'm going to balance my life for the reality of what my life is doing. And then in emergence, what we talked about in the brainstorm just a few weeks ago with Bob, he brought out how we can't control what emerges. And so maybe we set an intention in January, but what's coming out in emergence in April is something entirely different. And it was a fascinating concept to see how the arc of the themes spoke to the things that we might be doing in our lives and the families that we serve are doing in their lives. And then Leah came up with the idea of a bulletin board that says, what is your intention? How are you persevering? How are you balancing it? What is emerging each month, which I thought was a neat idea too. Last piece of business is that Wednesday, February 7th will be our next Zoom meeting, and that will be the brainstorm for May's theme of creativity, something near and dear to my heart. Those aren't recorded, and we just talk about all the fun things we can think of. So let's see. I am going to, go through the packet. Yeah, so for perseverance, I did it through 4 lenses. If you look at that table of contents, that's your way to see what 4 sessions I've built on the theme that give you these resources. The first is the whole slow and steady perseverance using the turtle. And by the way, the image and the symbol of the turtle, I'm a kind of person that says children don't have enough animals and clay in their lives. So if you put out a ping and you can find a real turtle, get it in there, because that would bring a whole sparkling reality to what perseverance might mean when you watch that tortoise walking around. And sorry, I'm using interchangeable turtle and tortoise. I really mean a tortoise, actually, to bring in. They're the dry ones. And then we do perseverance and love. So the whole thing for me after 33 years of being a DRE is the sentimentality of Valentine's Day. Yes, it's very sweet. And yes, we have children who need that sweetness. And yes, is there another angle that we can approach it? And when you say, oh, the theme is perseverance, and you look at 1 Corinthians, which is the standard boilerplate thing that everyone uses in their wedding, love is patient, love is kind. Well, what I suggested was a little thing for the older kids, youth. It depends on your older kids, older elementary school kids. But that, let me find my note. The word that is used is called macrothermia, which literally translates as love has a long fuse. And yet, the Latin is not a noun. Long fuse does not equal that. It's a verb. So it doesn't translate well into English. So the literal translation becomes love long fuses, like a verb. And the King James Version actually has the best translation. Love suffers long. And I thought that whole idea of saying to the children, you're smart enough, and the youth, to understand this whole process of translation of the Bible. And what does this mean in terms of love is patient, microthermia, macrothermia. Anyway, I had a lot of fun with that. I wanted to lift it up in case you have an opportunity to do Latin and Aramaic with your youth group and surprise them. All right. Then the next session would be perseverance and kindness, because that 3rd week in February is Random Acts of Kindness Day. And I found that engaged the children's imagination a lot. They liked those things. And so there are activities based on that one. And the one I wanted to lift up today is the whole tech time, because what I see is religious education getting siloed. So there's music, worship, social justice, and RE. And whenever I can find a bridge, like asking the kids to help the older adults with their smartphones, with Facebook, with whatever social media they are so facile at from 5 years old on up, and to bring them into, in my congregation, I can picture them in the back of the congregation at social hour, just sitting at a table and a little sign, hey, do you want me to talk to you about using your new smartphone? That kind of thing. That's persistence for the kids. They can't just grab their smartphone and say, well, you turn it on and then you do this. You know, my parents at 85, my dad would be like, well, how do you turn it on, you know? So there's the home button, that kind of stuff. So anyway, I wanted to lift that up as an opportunity to reduce our silos in religious education and get those kids out there teaching, not just learning. Last thing is, perseverance and laughter. The perfect opportunity is the Jewish holiday of Purim. If you don't know anything about it, I highly recommend using it. As all of the Jewish holidays, they're very, very family and kid friendly. You know, Passover, all these things are made for families. Purim is just a hoot. It's essentially a melodrama about Queen Esther. And it celebrates the perseverance of this Jewish queen who was nearly killed because she had to make a statement in front of her husband, the king. And the Jewish people who celebrate this, they dress up in costumes, they make noise, they boo at the bad guy, they eat special foods. And they laugh. The whole idea is to laugh. And for me, the teaching was the Jewish people know how to use humor to make it through the extreme destruction of their culture that keeps going on through anti-Semitism, through the Holocaust. They know how to have a good time, even in the face of that persecution. So they know how to persevere. Okay, that's enough of an overview. Oh, one more thing. I'm sorry. I'm also a proponent of inviting guests and visitors from your congregation in. So does it hurt to put on your Facebook page or in your newsletter, hey, who can teach Tai Chi? You never know which person in your congregation might come in and share that with the youth, with the kids. And Tai Chi is a wonderful form of embodying perseverance and this slow and steady movement. And whenever I see a post on the UU Religious Education Facebook page saying, what am I supposed to do? It just came over yesterday. What am I supposed to do? You know, the minister says I'm supposed to do all these things and I don't have enough volunteers. I think of that. Okay, find that person who can teach Tai Chi just once and stick them in there and embody perseverance. Okay, I keep promising. That's enough of a overview. So that's the packet overview. So what I'm going to move into now is the challenges foreseen or experienced relating to perseverance. So what I do is each person has a minute, maybe two, to talk about any challenges that they're experiencing with the theme, with the packet, with Soul Matters if you want to make it general, but do remember this is recorded. And that will be your topic. We're going to move into possible suggestions, opportunities, and takeaways later. Okay, so first on my screen, oh, it moved around, is, let's see if anyone's ready after all that talking I just did. Is anyone ready to do a challenge that they're facing? Not ready yet. Okay. There she is, Lenny.
Probably my biggest challenge right now is I'm still kind of recovering from all the holidays and all the days my kids have been off school. So I am really behind in a lot of my planning. I'm also, this time of year, I'm super focused. We send several of our youth group, our teens, to the UNO office. So right now we've been really focused on fundraising and getting all our ducks in a row for that. So
yeah,
yeah, that's kind of where my challenges are, is I need more hours in the day. So
sounds common. Thank you. All right, another challenge.
Okay, so this month is the first month that I've implemented Soul Matters. Our congregations decided to start at the beginning of 2018, and it has been going very well. I found that it was really important. I didn't know if I would need to do this, but I did actually need to print out the packet and put it in a 3-ring binder, and I had to really pull from all the different places. I found like I used some of the suggestions that were for Wonderbox stories as stories to use with a lesson, or I used, I don't know, it was just very, and then a lot of it was driven by what the minister had picked for his sermon topics. Even though they're all related to intention, I still wound up having to do quite a bit of customization to make sure that what the children were learning, and therefore hopefully talking with their parents about later, that it all kind of fit. Now, he got ahead of me a little bit, and so, because his holiday season wasn't quite as hectic as mine, so we're meeting on Friday for February, and hopefully we'll be able to do more planning together so that and then hopefully my earlier input will mean that maybe I won't have to rearrange so much stuff, but who knows? So yeah, that was challenging, but mostly, I mean, I'm preparing 3 classes and a Wonder Box and a children's chapel most months. And so, yeah, it's a lot. And I have to get in the mindset of planning out for the whole month. I wasn't really doing that as much and it's good. It's good to do that. And really, I need to be planning for much longer periods of time. I hope to get worked into that too.
Yeah.
I have.
All right. Thank you, Corinna. Good challenges. Yeah.
Our congregation has been without a minister for about a month now. And the challenges that I find as the DRE with the Soul Matters packets and making sure that it corresponds to what the sermon topics are on, simply because we don't have a minister that I could collaborate with like I was in the past. And so I have to go in a month ahead of time knowing these are what I'm already going to teach. And I have to be flexible with, well, maybe I can teach it this week instead of this week. And that's, I think, where my challenges lies.
Yeah.
The flexibility.
All right. That would be a challenge without a minister. Other challenges to be presented. And it's there.
My challenges right now are not so much with Soul Matters or the curriculum that we're grappling with. It's a combination of low attendance and that impacts our teachers' morale and interest in volunteering to teach. So this is going to be a good month to pay attention to that, and perhaps spend as much time with teachers working on their perseverance. And kind of treating this as not, it's not that we necessarily are always accomplishing something, but that by persevering and being present so that when the child shows up, we are there ready and really present with them. So that's the thing that I'm grappling with at this point. I'd welcome any ideas as to how to communicate that with teachers.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. It's okay to lurk, but I invite Sam. Do you have anything that you are looking at?
One of the struggles that I've been slowly working through over the past few months, this is our first year using Soul Matters. So the minister and I, we've been playing with themes, lots of discussion, seeing what works, what doesn't for our congregation. But for me, I echo the same challenge with planning ahead.
Mhm.
And I do have to say, after having a very nice, restful holiday vacation, that's been a little easier this month. So it gave me the really solid reminder of self-care,
Mm.
that I can't do this if I'm not taking care of myself.
Mhm.
So yay, Soul Matters for reminding me. That's important to implement, whatever the theme is for the month, that if I'm not mentally and emotionally prepared and have the energy to do this, it's not going to work.
Nice observation. All right. And bunch of stuff going on in the chat box. That's great. Is there anything you'd like to offer for audio, Ms. Loveland?
This is my first year sharing the DRE position, so I'm working with putting together chapels based on the theme, and just starting to look for more connection and a deeper understanding of what people are doing and what's going on. So I don't know that I have a whole lot to add. My biggest challenges at this point are connecting with the congregation, making sure I have volunteers, just with an 8-month-old baby, trying to make sure I have time to work. So there's things that are not quite as relevant to the Soul Matters packet in that way.
Yeah, but we're all DREs, and this is also a chance to get together with other religious educators, or whatever our titles are. Great.
Yeah.
All right. There's our there's our challenges. So now what I'd like to do is just spend a few seconds in quiet to think about what everyone has said. And then what I will ask is things that you might offer as suggestions. In other words, the hive wisdom for what the challenges are facing our group today. So just a few moments of silence, so all of the busyness and the talking that we've done can have a chance to sink into our souls a little bit. And as we allow the silence to end, give ourselves a little break, just like what Sam said, a little mini break. Suggestions on these challenges that we are facing, on things that cause us to focus on other things. Sort of a theme of planning ahead and focusing on other things and getting used to working with the Soul Matters material, feeling of being behind or just slightly ahead. And then the whole thing on the low attendance and the morale and getting used to being a DRE. Anyone want to start with possible suggestions? Yeah, we're all like, yeah, there's no solution ever.
One thing that I do is during my RE council meetings, we meet and we decide, we look at the Soul Matters RE packet and we try to figure out what holidays we want to lift up, and what material we want to teach on what Sundays. And we try to plan for 2 months out. So right now we have up until March planned out. And that way, when I go to the worship committee meetings, I can present what ideas we have and try to collaborate with them in a way that's not me telling them what we're doing, but really is me suggesting, hey, these are the holidays that we've noticed will be right around that time period, and this is the material we'd like to teach. Do you guys have any ideas? And I found that really helps. Just trying to look 2 months out and then bringing it to your group really helps.
Other suggestions? While you're thinking, I'll make a little suggestion. At one point, I was fortunate enough to serve with the minister, Reverend Lydia Ferranti Roseberry, who would allow RE to drive the topics in some cases. Wasn't always. It was more like what you were saying, Starlight Jazz, which is collaborating, but rather than having, pronouncements of what was going to happen in the sermon and then RE needed to follow along, she would say, well, let's do a mini retreat for the Sunday after all the holidays are over, and RE drove that. So not that I want to encourage RE setting the whole calendar, but certainly some collaborative stuff. It's just something to think about, put in your hat. I'm looking at what Corinna was saying about trying to develop the 3 classes and the planning. And I'm also aware that the first thing that came to me was, do you have a team of people who are implementing this, or are you structuring it, the whole thing, by yourself?
No, I do. I have volunteer teachers in all of those classes, and they're on my RE committee as well. But unlike Starly Jazz, we do a lot of event planning in our meetings, and we look and a lot of calendaring, but that deals with a lot of fellowship type opportunities, and it's been bleeding over into small group ministry a little bit and that kind of thing, but it hasn't been curriculum planning. I tend to do that myself, and then hopefully it will be more in concert with the minister now that we're doing Soul Matters. So no, it's good. I have wonderful, dedicated people in those positions. The middle school one that I mentioned to Bob is, we just don't have a lot of middle schoolers in our congregation right now. Our congregation is 10 years old, and it started at Sun City. So everyone was retired, and they've grown to almost 150 people now, and it's becoming more diverse, but it's still heavily canted towards older people. We have about 25 to 30 children enrolled, and my attendance swings from single digits to over 20 on any given Sunday. And that includes the nursery. I also have great 2 paid childcare providers in nursery, which are reliable, which is a huge relief. So I basically try and plan out all the lessons so that the teachers, I email them that on the Wednesday before, and they familiarize themselves with it, but then they can come into the classroom and teach, and So if there aren't a lot of kids that day, or if I wind up combining classes because there's not a lot of kids, it's not a huge morale drop for them because they didn't invest all that time.
Right.
So it's a morale drop for me, but I figure I can do that. But I remember that being an issue when I was teaching, that was annoying if I spent a bunch of time putting a whole plan together and then no one showed up. And so it's hard not to take it personally, and you feel like, oh my gosh, no one's coming. And I still feel that a lot as a DRE in my communications, where I have a private Facebook group for our families, I have a Google group, and I have a group me text, and I send all of those communications out always on a Friday about what's coming up on a Sunday, but also during the week there might be more communications about things. And they're so rarely responded to. It's like I'm just talking into a void. It's like, are you receiving these messages? I'm trying to meet you where you're at in all these different platforms of ways to reach out to you. And I still don't know if you're getting any of this. And I know they're busy, and I know that they're all these things pulling on their time. I've been there. I know what that's like. But at the same time, it's like you won't get as much out of this church and this community if you don't make it a priority. Mm-hmm. So there has to be a meeting in the middle. I'm going off topic here, but anyway, that was kind of like, so in other words, in response to what Bob was saying, yes, I try and shoulder as much of the planning stuff as I possibly can so that teachers can just enjoy the time with the children. And if it doesn't, and I may be a little bit controlling in that, it helps so that I know what's going on in that classroom. But ultimately there's a little bit of a price to pay. So that comes back around to what Sam was saying, in that you need to have the self-care to be able to persevere while you are trying to have the balcony view and look long-term over the length of the congregation and life of the congregation, and not be so reactive to what's happening on every Sunday. Even still, I'm very much a numbers person and a metrics person. And for the first year I was doing this job, which just ended, I pretty much, 2017 was the first year I'd done the job. I had all my attendance numbers and I had all my trends, and and I figured out, oh, well, we started out with 10 families and now we have 15. So that's a 50% increase in growth. It's like, you don't want to look at things like that. That can get really unhealthy really fast.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop now.
Oh, Karina, that was great. That was great, because I think we've all experienced that. And I know the teachers I've worked with over the years, their faces would fall when no one would show up, or there'd be two kids who are like, oh, I don't want to be here. Yeah. Comments? I will offer something that is going through me, which is taking a step back from Sunday morning. When we did a small congregations add-on to the Laredo Fall Con, and this came out, this very topic about the number of families and people losing their enthusiasm, and the DREs losing their enthusiasm, and that morale thing. And I invited everyone to take a step back and say, what if Sunday morning isn't the most important thing that's happening in your faith community? Maybe it's the emphasis, even Karina, when you were saying on the events, maybe it's the potlucks, maybe it's the sending the kids to the UU, oh geez, I forget the initials, UMO, UNO, UN, UUUN office. That's huge. And what Lenny's doing is focusing on that one thing. And maybe that's the most important thing for the whole congregation right now, and for her to spend her energy on. because that's huge to give those kids that opportunity as a congregation to develop their faith and go and see what can be done in Washington, D.C. right now. So what if Sunday morning isn't the most important thing? How would that change your approach to worrying about the morale, or to recruiting teachers even? I invite you to think about that kind of thing out of the box, because what's known is that our families, our nation's families, are becoming extremely tired. And Sunday morning is often the only time when they have to relax. And how heartbreaking it is when a teacher says to me, my volunteer work with you pulls me away from my family. And that Sunday morning time is the only chance they get. So rather than taking that as a sad thing, what if we turn it around and said, that's an opportunity to say, well, what is important? And if it's time together, what opportunities can we offer our families for time together as a faith community? There's a new thing I just found out about in Britain. They're doing messy church. Yeah, some of you are nodding your heads. So, they come and they do family activities. It's very Christian-centered. They're all Anglicans, I guess. But they have a short little time, and that's it. That's what they do. So I'm the kind of person that likes to think about things out of the box and innovation. You certainly see it coming out of the FOS Center. Our UUA people are talking about innovation. And as it gets more and more difficult to recruit teachers from our Hewlett-Packard executives and our lawyers and our very busy, service people, what are we going to provide them as a faith community? So there's one of my little soapboxes. Katie's soapbox time. Any comments?
I really appreciate that redirection, Katie. And I think I have that predisposition to prioritize Sundays only because my first experiences in RE were always as a Sunday teacher, and I didn't really do a lot beyond that. So now I have to think in these wider terms. I'm happy that we've had 4 all ages services during that past year, and those were the highest, amongst the highest attended days. And so that was really good. I'm trying to do a messy church kind of thing that's on a Friday evening. We'll see where that goes. And yeah, it is something I have to be constantly telling myself that, but unfortunately I don't feel like I can drop the Sunday. So I feel like I'm just widening my responsibilities and giving myself more stuff to do when I think about those other things. And I'm part-time, I'm 20 hours. I have to be very careful about my boundaries and yeah. But I do want all of those other things. And yeah, it might come a day where those things wind up happening and there's less kids there on a Sunday, which would look really strange to me. Mm-hmm. But I also worry about with our growth, we're gonna meet capacity in our building, and we're gonna have to go to 2 Sundays, and that will really change things too in terms of the number of volunteers to run a program like I'm running right now for 2 Sundays. I don't even think it's feasible. We'd have to really change things up. So yeah, it would be very different.
Yep. And my first reaction is not to do messy church on Friday, but to do it on Sunday morning. So you're doing it instead rather than in addition. Yeah, because that would be a time killer. Oof.
One thing that our church was missing, that we noticed our church was missing when our minister left, was a lack of the feeling of community. Utah community is very, very important. And so one thing that we are starting this month is a family game night, mm-hmm. Which isn't really RE related, but we are trying to do it once a month and have it be hosted by a different council or committee at our church in order to have less of the silos and more of this interconnectedness in our church. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Less about Sunday morning and more about community every other day of the week.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Starling.
We do a monthly family fun. It's with 2 U's night, and it varies. We've done a game night. We do a movie night every so often. We have the projector in our big sanctuary, and I make like a nest of pillows and blankets and fluffy things for the kids to roll around in, and there's popcorn, and we did pumpkin carving. But I try to, like, once every month to do a family fun night where, go away. He'd just lay down, it'd be fine.
Right.
But it's, it's nice because, it's all ages and all the members are welcome to come. And so we'll have the younger families with the little kids, and then some of our older members will come too. And it's kind of nice because it's a little more relaxed and a little more community building and a little less, oh, I have to have all this stuff exactly this way type of thing. So, and they're way more fun to plan, I think, than the usual.
Are those always on Friday nights, Lenny?
They are usually always on Fridays, yeah. Friday family fun with 2 U's night. So.
Yeah. Great. Welcome to somebody new. So, awesome. Well, I don't mind going off topic. Don't feel bad. That's an important thing. And perhaps we can spend our last 11 minutes together talking about any takeaways. So I'm certainly getting takeaways from just listening to you guys. Isn't it nice to be with a group of religious educators? We're so often isolated in our churches. We're the only staff person. But first, let's have a little silence. So think about all these things swirling around. And if you're like me, you may not be, but you might be. As a religious educator, I'm just always thinking about implementation. And yeah, I do the numbers crunching and all this kind of thing. Let's take a few minutes, just 1 minute of silence to let this settle in our brain. And as we emerge from the silence, and we think about what we might take away from this gathering, for me, I heard the echoing of what I do making any difference at all? And I have a few beautiful, glowing letters and comments from parents about what a difference it made to be in our faith community. And when I get into that space where I wonder if what I do is making a difference, I read those again, because I think that is it's one of the spectrums of our work. We come after school and Boy Scouts and soccer and all these things that families engage in sometimes. And yet, those moments that become so poignant when a family realizes how important it is to have a place to come when they've lost a family member, or their pet has died, or someone's elected who gives them a lack of hope. And where do they come? They come to us. All right. Other takeaways that you would like to share?
My favorite quote that came out of this was, "What if Sunday isn't everything?" And I have been Facebook messaging our church board president and sent her that and said, this is a great way to think about everything that we do for the church. And I think my takeaway is, instead of thinking everything leads up to Sunday, think of it more as every day there are opportunities for RE, and how can we develop those opportunities. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
For me, it's been a good support and reminder that it's okay to think outside the box, and having that rigidity is it's stressful. And if we want to persevere and continue loving what we do, that we don't have to stress about making sure that we have every lesson followed to the T, and embrace the volunteers that do show up on Sundays, and keep showering love and faith all over our children and youth that do show up on Sundays or Friday nights or Saturdays. And if we continue doing that, it's going to grow. It's contagious. And that message is going to spread. That's how our congregations grow. When the families are enthralled with what we are giving them, they're going to invite other families. And it'll just keep growing from there.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. That was great. Thank you both. Lenny, I'd love to know what you're thinking.
I love the thing that was said about maybe Sunday's not the most important. I agree with pretty much everybody on that. I totally just ordered that Messy Church book because I have not heard of that. And everybody seemed pretty excited about it. So I'm like, I'll just hop over to Amazon and see what I can find out about that. So I ordered that. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm still very much in recovery mode and not quite my usual self right now. So
yeah.
But yeah, I'm persevering, I suppose. The cat left, so that helps.
Yeah. All right. Karina.
I was just going to say, I give everybody else around me a lot more slack than I give myself. And so that was a very important message for me to realize or important thought to have today. I mean, I tell the congregation and the teachers and the volunteers and the people working in RE, I quote at them all the time that the congregation is the curriculum and all we do is faith development and all we teach is Unitarian Universalism. And yet I'm still trying to cross every T and dot every I and make sure everything is, you know, fully prepped out and no supplies are missing and and every communication's been sent and all of that stuff. So, but ultimately it's the relationship that you have with the children. I think that's what Sam was really saying, the children and their families. One other little thing that I was doing to help create that full faith week or full week faith was use some of the Soul Matters links as little sprinkles throughout the week. So I've shared the Soul Matters playlist and I've shared the Facebook page and I've asked them to given them little discussion starters to think about, you know, at dinner, during the week, those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. But yes, I'm very, I have very high standards. So I need to make sure that I approach those realistically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for this conversation today. It's been really good.
Good. Good. Bob, what's going through your mind?
Yeah, I agree that this has been a great conversation. One thing that for me re-emphasizes so much thinking beyond the Sunday school box is that last month we had the parent of one of our youth died, and it was pretty amazing to see the children and youth come out and be present for her daughter, and it was a reminder to me that it's not only our relationships with the children that matter, it's the relationships that develop among the children. Mm-hmm. And they were able to do a ministry there that I was not in a position to do. They were really present to her in a supportive way that they could, because they've been with her for a good long time. And so this stuff is real.
It is. Thank you, Bob. Yes, and isn't that the beautiful thing? I will leave you with two little thoughts. One is the work of Kimberly Sweeney, who is a religious education consultant. She is doing things she's calling the death of Sunday school. She's published a book about it. I found the title very good for getting my thinking out of the box, and she doesn't really say it's dying, but well, I'll let you read her stuff. But it's a good provocative title. The second is something Pat Ellenwood told me back in the 80s when I was a new DRE, and that was to start as you mean to continue. Because your service to the congregation over 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years is so valuable that we don't want you to burn out in 1 or 2 years. That's important, to stay there and know those families and know, thinking about the box, thinking outside the box. Well, thank you all for joining us, and I'm going to turn off the recording, and if you want to stay on,